Because the truth is, Neo never escaped from the Matrix, and he realizes that towards the end of the third film. But hear me out, I'm going to provide plenty of evidence from the films as well as philosophically. I know that some other channels have talked about this, and as the series goes on, it becomes more and more apparent that Neo never escaped. He just broke into a different layer of the Matrix. The machines have designed the Matrix in order for humans to not escape, and not only do they not want them to escape, they don't even want them to know that they're inside of a Matrix. People are safe and happy and have time. They will sit around and they will think about their existence, which is exactly what they don't want you to do in the Matrix. You're always going to have a small population, like the rebels we see in the film, who want to break out and they want to find out what's outside of the Matrix. Know that there are humans that will try to break out. It's inevitable. And so they prepare for that. That's why they have agents that fight back against you. Why wouldn't they make a Matrix inside of the Matrix? And that way people think that they broke out, they get to feel empowered by that, and then they go into the system of constantly fighting agents. And so a lot of their time is spent spinning their wheels instead of making real change.
It's August 2025. Now, I've talked over the years, for example, how the commoners all around the world, everywhere, doesn't matter where you come from, how they're being psyoped, socially engineered, socially conditioned, manipulated, misdirected with misinformation, disinformation, and everything else. And the whole information pool has become a cesspool of nonsense. I've also talked about, for example, sex trafficking. And I've done videos sharing personal as well as professional perspectives of all this. I want to segue here for a moment. I remember in 1999, it was the summer of 1999. Now, during the time between 1997 and 1999, I was gathering information and I was faxing all around the world. This is before the internet really hit big. And all I knew at the time was to fax everything out. And I was faxing a lot of people, governments, everything all around the world about that. And I remember one day I had sent out a bunch of faxes and I had someone, a lawyer, a very prominent lawyer in a big firm, call me out of the blue. And somehow my faxing this information outside of Canada that fast, somebody knew, because this individual said, you better stop what you're doing because there'll be nothing anyone can do to help you. And I'll never forget that. And I did stop, but it was too late because things unfolded with the woman that I married as they did, and I've done videos and talked about that as well. And I'm going to segue further with my efforts in Calgary, Alberta, and Alberta as a whole, with the sexual abuse, trafficking of vulnerable women, a non-profit mental health organization, which Alberta Health Services, as far as I know, maybe to this day, but at the time, was sponsoring them 60%. And my efforts on those two times in my life completely destroyed me. I've talked about this in other videos, so I'm not going to get into the details about it, but I'm getting to a point here. There's a lot of people out there who are trying to expose things, like, for example, the events in Calgary, Alberta, after I started to try to help, and I didn't set out to, I don't know, as a descriptive, be some sort of nonsensical hero or anything. I just said what I knew, and then things snowballed way over my head, which turned into exposing police, judicial, and political corruption. And here I am now in life, struggling. And I was saying how there's many people just like me who have been trying to get information out, and people simply ignore it. Now, I do get that there's a lot of crazy people out there who call themselves whistleblowers or trying to expose injustice, and at best they might have a personal case in their life which didn't go in their favor, and they think that's some sort of injustice. We see the same type of nonsense with these fake heroes of the so-called convoy of freedom. How the ones that got dinged, their supporters are saying, oh, look at the injustice. These are not examples of injustice. These are examples of guilty people. And then we get into how the commoners supporting guilty people and not caring about real innocent people simply because their cases didn't go the way that they wanted to, they were hoping for. But anyway, so real people trying to expose things have their lives destroyed, they're silenced, discredited to the point where no one's going to be listening to them. Now, I'm going to tie this all in together with what I started talking about, the commoners all around the world being psyop and everything else. Because there's been a lot of talk over many years now with Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein list, the so-called list. And everyone, for example, people on big channels to people just making their own personal little videos, giving their 2 cents worth, whatever it's worth, about that. And you can see the emotion, the anger. We got to see that list. They're covering it up, everything else. People have been really wanting to see this list. Now, apparently, there's no list. There's never been a list. What people have really failed to observe, with just even a little bit of research, are who's who. How is everyone connected? Like, who is this Epstein? What was his life like? Where did he grow up? Where did he go to school? Who does he know? And all the other players involved, and how you could see all the world leaders that are supposed to be against each other, how everyone's all tied in together, playing out a script which the commoners are just buying up. But everyone's been focusing on Jeffrey Epstein supposedly trafficking these young adult women for sex. Now, I don't know if there were prepubescent children involved, no idea. But regardless, everyone's like focusing on this, and so many different theories and everything else. And the bottom line is, it doesn't matter, because the stories you hear about and the individuals you hear about, you have to ask yourself, why are these people being promoted? Just like, for example, this convoy, fake hero people. Ask yourself, who's connected to who, and who's behind it all, and what's really fueling that. I'm going to segue for a moment. When you actually look at it, how the whole separatist movement from the Western provinces were really the foundation of the so-called convoy of freedom. Most people think, oh, it had to do with the masks and everything else, but it didn't accomplish any of that. But what it did accomplish was a division among Canada. People are just being led by the nose, chasing that carrot that's being dangled in front of them. Now I digress. So when it comes to, did this Jeffrey Epstein have a list? Didn't he have a list? It doesn't matter. Just like how I mentioned in a video a while back with regards to the so-called documentary or movie, whatever it was, The Sound of Freedom. And I explained in a video as well as a video short what that was all about. People really don't want to admit that they've been duped, manipulated. People need to stop paying attention to nonsense. Because if something is being presented to you, especially in the mainstream news, and the alternative news, alternative media, is the new mainstream news. I've said that before many times. People need to just walk away from it all, because it's not helping. In fact, it's fueling whatever agendas that are out there. But there are real people who are actually trying to share first-hand knowledge and insight supported with evidence that people should really start paying attention to. If you don't want to pay attention to me, that's fine, but there's a lot of other people. But yes, you need to vet out the majority of the claims who are just people with, to be nice, having issues. Find these people, give them the support, pay attention to them, help them, because they're the ones that are really going to make a difference. Not these ones that everyone's talking about. And do some homework. Don't be lazy. Research. And I was going to finish off by saying how people make claims, well, I'm relying on my discernment, and my discernment is absolutely great, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they're basing conclusions on their limited knowledge base, their limited critical thinking skills, and their inability to control their emotions. They call that having good discernment. I just want to give you some things to think about, especially when it comes to sex trafficking and this Epstein list that apparently now has never existed. And ask yourself, why are these things being promoted, and why is everyone focused on talking about that? Just think about it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.